Anyway, it's an honor and a pleasure to speak to you today. We have been working with Wayne Dyer's Power of Intention. And after the talks, we go downstairs and we get in our tables, groups, and we share the information that we've boned up on the previous week concerning our reading. This week, we're covering chapters 5 and 6, which is what? The impact, your impact on others when connected to the internet, or connected to the internet. That was a slip. Connected to intention. I intend to connect to the internet later. And then also chapter 6, which discusses infinity and intention, power of intention. It's like there's so much. Wayne Dyer used to speak a lot at Unity centers throughout the nation, and he was quite well versed in the non-dogmatic tenets that Unity has. And what's wonderful about reading Wayne's work is that he's kind of like contemporized the vocabulary to such a degree that it makes it accessible to a wider audience, and which I think is what's one of his main purposes in his mission here on this planet. And that's kind of the overriding theme in my talk today is purpose. Purpose defining, saying, what is what the reason for the things we do, the reasons we support certain ideas. So the purpose here at Unity, of course, is to come together in unity and share our common divine inheritance that we all have within us in terms of the innate Christ within, in terms of our Western orientation. We can look back through the millennium, and there's always been, incredible avatars that have surfaced in humanity, such as Lord Shiva, Lord Buddha, and Lord Jesus Christ, of course. And they exemplified the perfect connection to source, to God, to whatever you want to think it is in terms of creator, the source of all things, connecting with universal mind, as Wayne Dyer says. And that universal mind leads us to this, what he calls the field of intention, which is a field of energy. And it is something that has always been in existence from the beginning to now and into the future endlessly. And we get into a little bit of discussion about infinity and what that means in terms of how we connect to the power of intention. Now, there is so much that I've revisited with Dyer's work here in the power of intention. We kind of read through this book, I think several years back when it first came out. And the thing I took away from that at that time was the saying that he said, if you want things to change the way you look at things. Matter of shifting your perspective. And that shifting of perspective, of course, is us to be enabled to reconnect to the power of intention. It's just that when we are born and we go through our lives and our conditions, whatever, how environment we're in or what our circumstances are, when we come into this world, the power of intention, the field of intention was always there. It was before we became manifested in the physical form as a baby, a child, young, going through our lives to where we get to the point where we get so distracted with the materiality of the world and the physicality of things that we start to kind of diminish. And everybody's different with this process, but we do kind of gradually get separated from that initial oneness that we have with Source, with God. And so we as human beings, we have an innate thirst and hunger for spiritual fulfillment. And there have been so many different wisdom traditions that try to address that and try to fill that thirst and that hunger. And in the Western context, of course, our model, our way shower is, of course, Jesus, the Christ within us. Jesus, the man, showed and demonstrated what it was like to be thoroughly connected to the power of intention. It was incredible what he demonstrated. And he even said that these things I have done, and you can do much more so than what I've done. And that's, spiritually speaking, that's quite a challenge, because we are, we're flesh and blood, in terms of the material world, we're flesh and blood and bone and all that. And sometimes when we get so separated from our divine source that it seems impossible. But through working with the power of intention, we start to reclaim some of our divine inheritance. And we start peeling back the layers and years of like, I was talking to Jermaine earlier, it's like, reading Wayne again, it's like, I feel like a snake peeling my old skin, and I'm discarding my old snake skin, and I'm born anew. And that kind of is in line with what Charles Fillmore talked about in terms of the ability for regeneration. We talk about the ability of us to be able to regenerate. Jesus said, you must be born again. And people at that time took him literally, well, how can you do that? You'll be born again. But he was talking about being born of spirit and looking at things, anew with new eyes, new ears, and a new clean slate, and saying, hey, I have the ability, the potentiality to start over again and get things as right as I can possibly get in terms of my spiritual destiny and where I'm going. But Wayne Dyer in The Power of Intention gets into different aspects of how we do that. Last week's talk was concerning the obstacles that we create that keep us from our connection to the power of intention. And Linda addressed that quite well. Where's Linda? Hi, Linda. And so this chapter 5, talking about your impact on others when connected to intention, I'm kind of, thinking of George Burns and keeping things concise and to the point. I'm going to try to give you just kind of cliff notes about what Mr. Dyer is talking about. He talks about your impact on others when connected to intention. First of all, he makes a point that you receive what you desire for others. You receive what you desire for others. We realize, or you can realize that you desire certain things, but you have to really, we talk about surrendering our will to a higher will, to God's will, to source, when we're trying to achieve. Earlier in the book, he talked about this image of, he was a kid riding the subway and reaching up for the straps, that would carry him through his journey. Well, that's what it's like. We're always striving to reach that higher point within ourselves for our highest good. And so when we look at others, we try the intent is to desire for others that we would like for ourselves. It's like the adage, give and you shall receive. It's the same kind of dynamic. It's on a base level, it's like Newtonian physics. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. You put in is what you get out. You give and receive, that back and forth. So when you desire for others, when you receive what you desire for others, it makes perfect sense. It's within the context of divine law. I thought that was good. And he talks about holy relationships as versus unholy relationships. So, and it's not necessarily in a religious context. It's more of an acknowledgement and the intention to, in the Hindu tradition, we hear the saying, namaste. It says, I see and I salute the spark of divine within you as you see the spark of the divine within me. Namaste. And we get off, at a kind of a base level of understanding our unity in terms of our spiritual connection by acknowledging that. So it's Wayne Dyer talks about the holy relationship. You want to approach everything and everyone in that respect. You see things in a holy, healthy context versus the non-holy relationship where you suffer, you experience separation, and you get into the lower vibrational energies of anger and hate and envy and these things that block you from connecting to the field of intention. Nextly, he has a discussion about what is it? Oh, from ordinary to extraordinary. See, and he basically says, ordinary is just kind of go along, get along. You're not really doing anything other than trying to be a quote unquote normal person and live your quote unquote normal life. But what happens when you are existing at that level, that energy level, then you have a tendency to kind of fall into a rut. And it's easy to attract other people in terms of the law of attraction. You attract other people that are also in a rut. Now, when your intention is to get out of a rut, it reminds me of what Will Rogers said. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So those who aspire to connect to the power of intention, to lift themselves up, to grab for that strap in the subcar, what it does is it changes the field of energy, not only for you, but for those that you come in contact with. You radiate a higher level of energy, then that can't help but affect those around you in your relationships. It's like what he says about, a candle. You bring a candle into a dark room, the light, displaces all the darkness. And that's how it goes. That's part of divine law in terms of the metaphysics of light versus dark. And so it's the same thing when we aspire to reach a higher level of energy, the field of intention. And so that's an extraordinary dynamic that we have the potentiality to do, is that living and striving for an extraordinary spiritual experience while on this planet, being connected to intention. And that does have an impact. It's how your energy impacts others. And he gets into a list, kind of a bullet list. I know people don't like bullet lists. Linda mentioned that last week, of your presence. When you're connected to the power of intention, you have a presence. It radiates a higher energy level. If people know it, it's like, what is it about that person? I don't know, but I want to hang out and spend time with that person, as a person that is working at lower energy levels. A lot of us in Unity use the analogies of Christopher Robin and the Pooh characters, and the Eeyores. I can only be around so many Eeyores. In a more contemporary sense, in terms of society, they call them psychic vampires. They suck the life out of you. You can't hang around that energy very long. That's why, for me, it's so important to come to Unity and get recharged with spiritual energy, because gosh knows that there's enough out there in the world to distract me to think that, what's the point? What's the use? And that's not how I want to live my life. I'm an optimist at heart. And so we have this presence. When we start to reveal more of our divine self, it radiates a presence. And Wayne kind of lists them a little bit here. One is your presence instills calmness. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I feel calm around this person. Feel at peace. Your presence leaves others feeling energized. Ooh, that was refreshing. Then your presence allows others to feel better about themselves. I don't know, I just feel good now, having heard this person talk or just be around that person with their energy. And you want that to linger. It reminds me of when Jermaine and I were down in Ketchum, Idaho, and just a week before, we were down there for a convention, and the week before, the Dalai Lama was there. And it was incredible, the energy that lingered. people, I was looking at people and they're like walking around on a cloud or something. It just, and that's so true. That presence is so lasting and enduring, especially if it's a very strong present spiritual, alignment that people, are attracted to. So yeah, feel others to feel energized. Your present allows others to feel better about themselves, of course. And your present allows others to feel unified. Wow, for the first time, I feel like I really belong. I feel like I'm with everybody else. I feel we're one together. And that kind of attitude, that sense of things, of being unified, is a great enabler for you to allow yourself to connect to the power of intention, your source, God, whatever you want to define the creator as. Your presence instills a sense of purpose. Ah, I see now, it's clear. I was born again. I see with new eyes. I hear with new ears. And I'm committed to living my life this way every day from now on. I'm shedding that skin. And so this is my purpose, is to continue on my spiritual path in a way that is not only for my own good, but radiating that presence to others so they may see how to exemplify for themselves and radiate the light of source, of spirit, of God, and be in tune with your Christ nature, our Christ nature. And your present ensures others, your present inspires others to greatness. Wow, look what he or she did. It's possible that I could do the same thing. There's no chains that bind me. I'm free, I'm unlimited. These are the things that in unity we talk about all the time. And we remind ourselves all the time too. And says your presence aligns with others with beauty. When you're connected to the field of intention, your impact to see others as beautiful creations of God, children of God, that we have the same divine spark. I'm talking about the namaste part of us, and see how beautiful it is. We see beauty in everything and everyone. And when you have that perspective, how could not creation be beautiful when we are connected to intention? It's one of the 7 faces of intention, which I'll remind you are: 1, creativity; 2, kindness; 3, love; 4, beauty; 5, expansion; 6, unlimited abundance; and 7, receptivity. Give and I shall receive. Give, receive. It's that divine flow of circulation. What you give is what you get. I think Joseph, there was a quote that Wayne Dyer put in his book, quoting Joseph Campbell, an American preeminent philosopher of his day, saying something about there's no hereafter. I mean, this is it. This is all you get. If you look elsewhere, forget it. This is it right here now, So you have to make the decision. What do you want to do? You want to sit on the fence, or you want to jump off either the left or the right or whatever it's going to be. But you've got to take some sort of action in the here and now, because this is where you're at right now, is in the here and now. So I like that. So looking at everything in beauty with the lens of beauty, buoys that connection to the power of intention. And your presence instills health rather than sickness. When you allow yourself to see yourself, as Myrtle Fillmore did, that she's a child of God and she didn't inherit disease, and you focus on that, and you see yourself whole and complete, you can emanate and reflect that wholeness of health. And other people can see that in you. They can see that in your eyes. They can see that you're aligned. All of a sudden, it can inspire them to say, well, I want that too. Yes. So I am not sick. I am perfect in the eyes of the Creator, the way I was meant and intended to be from the very beginning. And so your impact, this is what I thought was really interesting, is that your impact, when you're connected to the power of intention, it has impact for the consciousness of all of humanity. Wayne Dyer noted a study, a book that was done by Dr. Harper, talking about like 85% of humanity is working in negativity. But those that come along and express enlightenment on a higher vibrational level diminishes, like the candle diminishes darkness, does the same thing towards consciousness of all humankind worldwide. That's why I really believe in the World Day of Prayer. We come together and we hold in consciousness the issues of the struggles and the challenges that we here on this planet are facing. And we come together in collective consciousness, transcend our differences, and use the power of prayer to manifest the highest good for all humankind. Not just me and my family. We're affected, of course, but in the larger scale, the big picture, I like the fact that we get into the area of, and I'm getting a little maybe out there, but with the thought of cosmic consciousness, which is still the source. That's part of the source, cosmic consciousness. Is still attached from the very beginning to right now and to where you're going. And it's up to each and every one of us to decide which way we want to go in terms of our intentions and how we connect to the field of intentions. So in a nutshell, let's talking about the impact that your presence has when you are connected to the power of intention. And he finishes the chapter with some suggestions. It's always suggestions because everybody's different. Everybody's ready to hear what they're going to hear at a certain time. I remember I hear things now that I heard years ago, but I didn't pay any attention to because I was too busy being separate and being out of, being involved in the world, making a career for myself and doing this and that. And so didn't really hear it the first time. But now I'm hearing things that I heard a long time ago, but now they're really kind of sinking in and making sense. So, I guess there's a natural progression about our receptivity in terms of when we hear things that we need to hear at a certain time, basically. So these are suggestions, and wherever you're at on your spiritual journey, then I hope you can absorb that, assimilate it, and try to emanate it in your personal life with striving to connect with the power of intention. And so he suggests 5 suggestions for improving, for implementing the ideas that he discussed in chapter 5. 1, be aware of the importance of making all your relationships divine. Yeah, seeing the God in everyone. I mean, it's when you do that, it really changes the nature of your relationships and how you interact with your relationships. 2, when a question of morality arises concerning how you should act towards others, simply ask yourself, what would the Messiah do? The Messiah, in this case, being the 7 faces of intention. So are you connected with, are you expressing yourself through creativity, through kindness, through love, through beauty, expansion, unlimited abundance and receptivity? So these are things you can ask yourself when you engage and you find yourself in situations that you question how you should respond. 3, keep track of the judgments you direct towards yourself and others. So that kind of, to me, that kind of speaks to the law of attraction. If I'm thinking, dark thoughts, the dark things are going to happen in my life because I'm attracted to those kind of things. If I'm thinking enlightened things, then I'm going to see enlightenment in everything. And so, you are what you think you are. But Wayne is really, really good ways you can suppress the ego self, because the ego has its own demands of us as we go along. And we always constantly, I think some liturgy calls it the adversary or the devil or whatever it is that blocks us from connecting to source. So that's what we want to keep in mind, is our judgment. We in Unity, we like to say, rather than judgment, we like to say discernment. Discernment, is this for my highest good? Does this serve my highest good? Does this no longer serve me? Rather than judging it as good or bad, we discern whether it's going to work for us in terms of helping us develop further spiritually. And 4, whatever others want it for them so strongly that you disperse this energy outward and an act from this level of spiritual consciousness. So my desire for you, for us all as a spiritual community, is to be connected to the power of intention. Understand that this is what we're meant to do, not that it's something that I might do. It's ultimately what we must do if we want to grow and understand why we're created and manifested on this planet. I heard people say that we're here to learn how to love, basically, to love one another. It could be more simple than that. So I think he concludes 5 with number 5 suggestion. By continually, what's that? I can't even read my own handwriting. By continually alert, be continually alert to the fact that simply by thinking and feeling in harmony with the 7 faces of intention, you'll be counterbalancing the collective negativity of a minimum of 90,000 people, perhaps millions. So I see it like you throw a little pebble in the water. What happens? Boom. It is part of one of the faces of intention, expansion. So I take my pebble of intention and throw it in the water. It emanates outward. And so it is the desire living on this planet to see all of humankind coalesce into a higher vibration. We strive for that unity, at least at the local level here at Unity of Missoula. We come together as collective souls where we're at in our spiritual journey. But there's always a facet that turns. We say, oh yeah, I see it now. I see it now. It makes perfect sense. 20 years ago, what? Now I see it. That's perfect. And it's in alignment with my spiritual path and with my connection to the field of intention. And everyone that's connected to intention realizes that it's always been there. Wayne Dyer has, always been one to promote human potentialities, human evolution, that progress in terms of where we're at as a species, being human. As I mentioned before, I saw that bumper sticker. Was it humankind, be both? Power of intention and the impact you have when you're connected to that power of intention. Now, moving on to chapter 6. How are we doing on time here? We're talking about infinity and intention. There we are. He starts the chapter with an interesting demonstration or exercise. He says he wants you to close your eyes for a moment and say to yourself, I'm not from here. I'm not from here. Let that sink in. Doesn't that kind of put things in perspective if you really accept that statement? I'm not from here. I think in one of my earlier talks, I said, I'm just passing through, trying to learn as much as I can, and do and be the best Christ I can be in this here and now. Well, I'm not from here though, because when you're connected to intention, you realize that it's infinite. It's, you think about the issue of eternity. I remember my dad used to say, he was a Navy vet, and he said, this life is just a boot camp for eternity. That's true. We learn our stuff here and we move on. But the saying, and Wayne discusses that aspect in terms of that, you have a choice, you are, in terms of your perspective, are we spiritual beings having a human experience? Or if we see the negative aspect of it, we are human and occasionally have a glimpse of a spiritual experience. And that's, if to me and to him, it seems a little depressing and a little dark to think that way. He talks about being, in terms of infinity, you can either be active with your sense of infinity or be non-active in your sense of infinity, which means leads you to more separateness, separation, and despair, and fear, and anxiety, and anger, and all these negative emotions that as humans we experience. But when we become active in our sense of the infinity, then we go into discussions of this material world where it's only a temporary station. It's only a temporary station. There's a reminds me of this Yiddish saying. I kind of joke about it because it's just so black and white. You can see this guy saying, "Hey, you're born, you die. Are you born, you live, you die. What's the big deal?" And that's kind of bleak and pretty black and white. Well, I prefer not to look at life that way. I prefer to see it as an opportunity for spiritual growth, of course, and reclaiming my spiritual inheritance and getting back to the source, getting back to that field of intention, intended for me and all of us to be a better Christ, a better Buddha, a better, Muslim or Hindu. It's not that I'm Christian or Muslim or Buddhist, or you are. It is that element of being. I am the I am. I am, I am from source. I am from that field of intention to connect with that. And everything that's possible is possible when connected to the power of intention. Now, in terms of his discussion of infinity, intention and infinity, he realizes that, I'm not from here. Even Jesus said it so well. It's to be in the world, but not of this world. The passing parade. And the point he makes is life is eternal. So when you're connected to intention and the infinity of that energy, that before you were manifest in terms of this body, you were a spiritual entity connected to source, and then you came into this world, manifested in the physical world, and you're learning your lessons and you're going along. And so you don't. And when it comes to our mortality, you can look at death in a different kind of lens. You can say, I'm just passing through. This is temporary. It's a matter of how I accept my own mortality and how I look at it. So once I shed off this, as Eric Butterworth called it, the human spacesuit. Everyone has different expiration dates on their human spacesuit, but still that willingness to accept that and allow that, because and see it for what it is. You have no fear of death, because you don't really die, because infinity is forever. When you're on the active side of infinity, you walk through the threshold of death as just another door that you go through to experience more of your connection to source, to your intended destination. He talked about destiny. And he says that, your fear of the infinite, he talks about that. It's whether you're being active about your, understanding and realization that you are mortal. We're all gonna die. It's just a matter of how we think about death and how we spiritually comprehend that in terms of the process that we have while we're on this planet. Ooh, I gotta move along here. So we all have, he says we all have an appointment, our destinies, we all have an appointment with that time of our demise or death or whatever you want to characterize it, but that's okay. If you're connected to the power of intention, you're going to do okay. So when you're connected, you have a sense of destiny. And I'd like to read a quote that he says from Rumi. He's a Hindu poet. Where is that? Yeah, regarding your destiny. But then he likes to compare and contrast. That's what I love about Wayne Dyer. Rumi says this: you were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You were not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly. I like that. Now, conversely, if you're not connected to the power of intention, you're living in non-active sense, your non-active part of infinity, you might sound like this: you are an accident of nature. You are subject to the laws of luck and chance. You can be pushed around easily. Your dreams are meaningless. You are meant to live an ordinary life. You have no wings, so forget about flying and stay grounded. Gosh, that's pretty inspiring, isn't it? No, I don't think so. I don't do that. So Rumi has a good idea about the power of intention when we're connected to it and how we can see our destiny as spiritual beings while we're learning our lessons here on earth. And speaking about a sense of things, you also gain a sense of the possible, a sense of awe. You see wonderment in all things. This kind of, you see this thing in when you look at things with the eyes of beauty, you can see things with awe too, and the magic of life. So, in conclusion, he says, your purpose will only be found in service to others and in being connected to something greater than your own body, mind, ego. So we encourage you to stay on the active side of infinity so it enables you to stay connected as much as you can to the field of intention, the power of intention. And we thank Wayne Dyer. So, like the last chapter, he has 5 suggestions. And they're in the book, and we'll probably discuss those at the lunch meeting. So thank you for your time and listening. I encourage you to keep studying the book if you're reading the book. It's really a great rejuvenation of spirit and really is a guidebook for you reclaiming your divine inheritance. And with that, we're going to go into a little meditation. So I invite you to sit back in your seat, make yourself comfortable. And we'll start with a little breathing. We'll breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Come to that place of stillness and calmness. Our intention is to unify with Source. Unify with where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. Ever mindful of the impact that we have on others when we reflect our connection to the power of intention. Source intends us to be the most perfect Christ that we can be in any given moment, today and beyond today. And we do this with a sense of humility. It is not I that do the work, but source, intention, God that works through me to manifest all good in everyone and everything. And so it is, so it shall be. Amen, amen, and namaste. Now, invite you to repeat with me prayer of protection. Together. The Church of God surrounds us. The love of God upholds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. I'd like you to stand and let's sing the peace song. Sorry, George, I went a little over time there. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Yes, let it begin with you. Let it begin with me. Let us begin with all of us right now, right here, every day. This day is the day you have to be the best Christ you can be. And while you're going around and enlightening the rest of the world, remember to have fun.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. Hope it all worked out well. And we'll see you in book group tomorrow. Bye-bye. And then you go down here. That's perfect. Before you do that, right here it says recording. It also has a little thing right next to the microphone. So that's how you know you're recording. Okay. And you can hit meeting for all.